How would you, the average Brit, feel if, in the day after a general election, the losers massed on the Mall to prevent the prospective Prime Minister from reaching the palace in the expectation of being asked to form a government? This is what Remainers seek when they demand a second referendum before we leave the EU. It is a democratic outrage. However, even before the government grapples with the issue of what question to ask in a second referendum, there is a more difficult issue to address that is even more problematic than the West Lothian question. So awkward and disruptive that perhaps it deserves to be called the Coburn Question. If the second referendum has a lower turnout or fewer votes for Remain than were for Leave in the first, which is the valid mandate, the larger or the more recent? Just as the Remainers refused to accept the first decision of the British people, so those who want to return democracy to these shores could never accept a tyranny imposed on them by what would be a comparative minority. The extraordinary thing of the events of 2016 was the size of the turnout in the referendum. The UK has never seen a bigger mandate ever. The polls and the establishment were wrong-footed by the sheer numbers of people who they labelled as apathetic and unlikely to vote. Before we have left the EU, any call for a second referendum will confirm, not only in the minds of those people who voted for the first time in decades, but also many more besides, that it is futile to vote under the present establishment regime. First they gave us Project Fear. That didn't work. Now it's Project Attrition. Enough. We won't play your games. The EU sells us 80 billion more in goods each year than we sell to them. What would be the point of a trade deal that only helped the EU and did nothing to help the UK sell the services at which our economy excels? We now know that the EU will refuse to include services in a deal, so there can be no sensible, sustainable deal with the EU. From the speech that we heard from the Irish Prime Minister giving in Strasbourg this week, we now know that the EU is intent on including Northern Ireland within its single market, and by doing so, seeks to break up the United Kingdom. Bearing these things in mind, if a second referendum does not include the option of leaving without a deal, then I, for one, will be stridently campaigning to boycott this as an anti-democratic fraud upon the 17.4 million who voted so gallantly for Leave in 2016 and have been waiting patiently ever since. Thank you.